3 spine-chilling true first days on the job. Sinister secrets revealed that will haunt you forever. Sarah clenched her fists as she stepped into Millfield Medical Center, the scent of antiseptic barely masking the moldy undertones of desperation. The dim lights flickered above her, casting eerie shadows that danced along the peeling walls. This was the start of something new, a night shift nursing job, but dread twisted in her stomach like a coiling serpent. Her mind raced, thinking of Jake, her little boy sleeping soundly in their rundown apartment. She needed this. It had to work. The first night was surprisingly calm until the whispers began. They slithered through the air, unsettling and chilling. It started with the flurry of activity in room 212. An elderly patient in a stained gown muttered about a ghostly figure roaming the corridors, a nurse lost due to a surgery gone horribly wrong. Her eyes gleamed with fear, but Sarah shook it off as a symptom of confusion. A nursing job shouldn't be spooky, right? But then came the flickering lights, casting a dim glow across the empty hallways. Shadows loomed larger, creeping closer as muffled voices echoed around her. Just nerves, she told herself, her heart pounding in her chest. You're just tired. Yet her hands trembled as she pushed through the next set of doors. The second patient she checked had wide eyes, begging her to heed his warning about the nurse who disappeared years ago. They buried her with the secrets, he rasped, clutching her wrist. Panic shot through her, and she fought the urge to pull away. What secrets? Unease dripped from the walls like the damp chill that clung to the air. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah continued into the bowels of the hospital, a shiver raced down her spine. Old records lay tucked away in a dusty corner, filled with details of tragic patient deaths too grisly to fathom. A predator, a doctor linked to the disappeared nurse, moved through the halls in a pristine white coat. It felt like a fraying thread pulling her and Jake deeper into danger. As whispers turned to frantic chatter, she felt the walls closing in. Each night shift dripped with anticipation. Her co-workers brushed off her warnings, faces blank and disbelieving, leaving Sarah isolated in her fear. Who could she trust? She gazed at her phone, heart racing. Anonymous messages arrived, detailing the sinister web woven within the hospital. Was it true? Her pulse hammered as she recounted the chilling connection of one esteemed physician to the tragic deaths. For the sake of Jake, she had to unravel this darkness. With adrenaline spurring her on, she crept through the hallway, the shadows wrapping around her like cold fingers. Just as she began gathering evidence, flickering lights plunged her into an abyss. The whispers intensified, echoing the chaos of the past, until a loud bang jolted her from her focus. The door slammed shut, heart racing. She understood she wasn't alone. No, not in this forsaken place. Shadows twisted and curled. She felt the suffocating grasp of fear wrap around her throat. Footsteps thundered in the silence, each step sending icy tendrils creeping up her spine. It was then she received another message. You don't understand. You're in danger. The dread washed over her like a cold wave, leaving Sarah breathless. Who or what was out to get her? And how could she escape this waking nightmare to keep Jake safe from the horrors lurking not just in the hospital, but beyond its tainted walls? The lights flickered wildly, the shadows shifting like live things, whispering secrets only the darkness understood. Sarah's heart drummed in her ears, drowning out the quiet chaos surrounding her. She backed away from the door, pressing against the cold wall, searching for a way out. The oppressive silence clawed at her, promising that whatever had just slammed that door was closing in. Breathe, she mouthed, though the words felt empty. Her knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself to remain standing, eyes darting to the corners of the dimly lit corridor. Was it her imagination, or did the shadows grow thicker, more alive? She needed to escape, to warn Jake, but the thought of facing whatever lurked in the darkness froze her blood. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the far end of the hallway. It was faint, shimmering at the edges like a mirage. A woman in a nurse's uniform stood there, the hem of her dress tattered, her face obscured in shadow. "Help me," came the whisper, a sound like rustling leaves carried on wind. Muffled and haunting, it wove through the air as if it was stitched together by heartbreak. Who are you?" Sarah stammered, taking a tentative step forward. A chilling premonition gripped her heart. She didn't want to discover this woman's truth. But something, a spark of empathy, perhaps, pulled her instinctively closer. The figure beckoned, its arm outstretched. Then Sarah heard it sobbing, low but palpable. "They want to let me go. You have to help me." The chilling waves of recognition washed over Sarah. She'd heard this story before, echoed in the warnings of terrified patients. As she moved to approach, a loud siren blared suddenly, shattering the silence. The spectral nurse vanished in the cacophony, leaving only an echo of despair. Nausea twisted in Sarah's stomach as she stood in the emptiness, the siren fading into a haunting silence. Had it been an illusion? Or maybe a ghost trapped in the hospital's web? The pressure in her chest tightened. She needed answers. She slipped back into room 212, her pulse racing. The elderly patient was gone, his bed sheets rumpled but empty. "No," she gasped, panic igniting in her chest. It wasn't just her imagination. Something was very wrong. The whispers returned, more insistent, pressing against her consciousness. "Help us." Without thought, she opened the old records she'd found earlier, panic fueling her search for answers. Each date and description was more grotesque than the last. Patients had died under bizarre circumstances, each linked to a single name, a doctor named Edward Harrow. The notes hinted at shady practices, unannounced surgeries, and missing persons under his care. "Who are you?" Sarah spat, fingers trembling over the pages. The shadows danced more wildly, as if answering her in defiance, perhaps. Harrow's name carried an energy, a dark pulse reverberating through her bones. It felt like a warning, and the longer she stared, the more the shadows grew bold. With resolve, Sarah lifted her phone, heart pounding as she typed an urgent message to the anonymous contact. "I need help. Someone's gone." "Who are you?" The words felt desperate, heavy as her heart sank. But as she pressed send, the lights flickered violently again, plunging her into darkness, a suffocating stillness enveloping her. Time felt suspended as she waited for a reply, but in the silence, she felt the return of footsteps, deliberate and slow. Ice coursed through her veins as she turned slowly, dread clawing at her throat. Then came the text, vibrating in her hand. "You shouldn't have sent that." "He's coming." "Who?" "The doctor?" The whispers swelled like a storm, drowning out her sanity. With a scream that clawed its way from her gut, Sarah bolted from the room, unsure if she was more terrified of the shadows or what awaited her beyond the walls. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a fight for survival. And the deeper she dug, the more tangled she became in the horrors of Millfield Medical Center. What awaited her in the dark corners of the hospital? As she sprinted forward, she knew one thing: the hunt had begun. Sarah dashed down the corridor, her breath hitching in her throat with each hurried step. The shadows seemed to pulse, stretching out from the walls, reaching for her as if they had taken on a life of their own. Every corner she rounded felt like a gamble, the possibility of encountering an unseen terror tugging at her mind. "Stay calm, stay focused," she whispered, but her own reassurance felt like a desperate plea against the overwhelming fear pressing in on her. She had to find Jake. He might know more about this place, about the evil lurking behind its sterile facade. But as she turned another corner, an icy chill swept down her spine. What if he was part of it? There was an exit at the end of this corridor, or so she hoped. But as she reached for the door handle, another reverberation echoed through the halls, a low, menacing growl. It rumbled from somewhere deep within the bowels of the hospital, like a beast awakening from a long slumber, the very atmosphere charged with violence. She hesitated, her hand hovering above the handle. Darkness loomed like a suffocating fog, but she was drawn to it, compelled by curiosity and terror alike. The memory of the nurse's whisper clawed at her mind. "Help me." Could the answers lie in shadow? Her heart thudded loudly, almost drowning out the haunting echoes of that command. Gathering her determination, Sarah flung the door open and burst into the next room. It was an alcove filled with dust and unused equipment, a place that felt both forgotten and haunted. Shadows clung to the corners, blending seamlessly into the dark gray of the walls. As her eyes adjusted, she squinted to see something slumped in the far corner, the remnants of a patient, or perhaps another victim of Harrow's dark legacy. Sarah felt a surge of revulsion, overwhelming her senses like a wave crashing on the shore. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her attention. The figure lifted its head slowly, revealing hollow eyes and a twisted, skeletal smile that sliced through the dark. "Help me," it rasped, its voice a cruel echo of the spectral nurse's. Sarah's breath hitched as she staggered back, gagging on the bile rising in her throat. The figure raised its arm, now revealing jagged scars running along its wrist like horrific gashes of lost life. "They won't let you leave," it croaked, a dreadful certainty knotting Sarah's stomach. "No," she screamed, ripping herself away from that nightmare. She sprinted back into the hall, the menacing sounds growing louder, a chorus of despair and rage. The exit was her only salvation, but the creeping dread grew tangible. Shadows blurred her vision, shapes twisted and distorted, dancing just beyond her reach. "Run, Sarah," she warned herself, pushing forward until she collided with another door. This one, heavy and intimidating, wasn't much different from the last. She threw her weight against it, her fingernails scraping against the wood as she shoved it open. Inside was a dingy staircase spiraling down into an abyss painted by the lack of light. With no other choice, she slipped inside, the door slamming shut behind her with a finality that made her spine tingle. The musty air swallowed her, every step echoing back, taunting her. The whispers returned, louder now, frantic and pleading. "Help us find him." Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, straining to push them out. She picked up her pace, descending each step with a growing sense of urgency. Suddenly, a voice broke through the din, a familiar one. "Sarah!" It was Jake's voice. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly replaced with dread. She could not see him, but the sounds echoed strangely, as if coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then it struck her, a chilling thought. What if Jake was trapped too? What if he was one of them now, ensnared in the web of darkness? "Jake!" she called, panic lacing her voice. "Where are you?" "Down here, Sarah." Please. His plea was cut off by a sharp constriction that echoed around her, sending a chill to the depths of her bones. But before she could move, the ground shook violently beneath her feet, and the walls trembled as if breathing. Yes, here a whisper crept into her ears, soft and sinister. "You're not alone." In that moment, Sarah realized with horror that the hunt was far from over. There were darker secrets that lay ahead, twisted paths leading deeper into chaos. Breaths came fast and shallow as she prepared herself for whatever lurked beyond, ready to reveal its gruesome truth. Just then, the lights flickered on, blinding her momentarily. When they dimmed back to their half-light, there stood Edward Harrow, every feature twisted into a grotesque smile that promised despair. All hope faded as he spoke. "Welcome, Sarah. We've been waiting for you." What had they been waiting for? Would she become another lost soul in Millfield Medical Center's haunted halls? Sarah's heart raced as she faced Edward Harrow. The air grew thick, suffocating, laden with the weight of his smile. He took a step closer, his form eclipsing the dim light, as if he were a shadow made flesh. The walls seemed to bend around him, clawing inward, closing Sarah's escape. "What do you want from me?" she managed to stammer, her mind screaming for answers. Harrow tilted his head. "So curious, aren't we? You're in a world where questions have consequences," he crooned, amusement glinting in his eyes like shards of broken glass. "You're drawn to the darkness, Sarah. You can't resist, not here. Let Jake go?" At the mention of her friend's name, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "Ah, Jake, such a loyal companion. But loyalty has its price. He is far closer than you think." A tremor rippled through the ground again, and Sarah stumbled as the dim hallways distorted again before her eyes. "What have you done to him?" she shouted, her voice rising. The memory of hollow, tortured eyes flashed through her mind. She couldn't let that happen to Jake. "Done? I've merely opened the door to possibilities. In this place, life and death are threads in a tapestry you cannot comprehend," Harrow replied, his voice laced with mockery. Sarah's pulse quickened. She couldn't let him toy with her. "Why have you brought me here?" He leaned closer, and she recoiled instinctively as his breath brushed against her skin. You're special, Sarah. The shadows have chosen you for something grand. All I need is for you to embrace it. Embrace what? I want to become like them. His laugh echoed through the room, sharp and agonizing. The shadows morphed, sliding along the walls like oily smoke. Faces whispered from within them, spectral forms begging for release, for recognition. But they were chosen, too. Every one of them. They thought they could escape, but here they are trapped in the darkness. The floors creaked underfoot as Sarah felt the hospital vibrating with a sinister pulse. She had to move. I want to let you take me. Her voice rang out, steel-laced despite the fear clawing at her insides. With a predatory smile, he stepped back, gesturing toward the staircase. Then prove it. Face the darkness. If you want Jake, you must see what lies beneath the surface. You may find more than you bargained for. Panic surged. Every instinct urged her to flee, but she could hear Jake's voice again, faint and desperate. Sarah, help me, fueled by desperation, and perhaps the mad courage of knowing she couldn't leave him. She dashed to the staircase. With each step, the air grew colder, a biting chill that seeped into her bones. The whispers grew louder, reverberating like a chorus of lost souls beckoning from the depths. Find us, help us, join us. The darkness thickened, wrapping around her like tendrils. Shadows morphed into grotesque faces, their mouths opening in silent screams. Each silhouette pressed in closer, their anguish reaching beyond the mere physical. Sarah's feet moved without thought, propelling her deeper, deeper down into the abyss, the echo of her own heartbeat drowning out the horror. Jake! She screamed, but all she received was an echoing silence, heavy and oppressive. Suddenly, the darkness burst open with blinding light, a brilliant flash illuminating a cold, damp cellar. In the center stood Jake, shackled and pale, staring at her with hopeless eyes. Sarah, don't! He yelled. But the command was swallowed by a deafening roar, the walls shaking as a monstrous figure loomed behind him. Filling the doorway to darkness, she just fled. Harrow's laughter echoed down the hall, a dark promise that sealed her fate. Welcome to your new beginning, Sarah. There's no turning back now. What had she unleashed? As the beast took a step forward, toothy and hungry, Sarah's heart plunged. She had to act quickly, or they would both be devoured. The choice was all hers now. But could she confront the darkness without losing herself forever? Would she and Jake survive? With those thoughts racing through her mind, the chaos of the moment fell around her like a shroud, leaving her standing at the edge of oblivion. The air shifted as Sarah's instincts kicked in. Heart pounding, she took a hesitant step forward, her eyes locked on Jake. The chains binding him rattled as he struggled against their grip, a desperate look in his eyes that sliced through the thickening dread. Get out of here, Sarah! He shouted again, but the commanding urgency only fueled her fear. The towering beast behind him shifted slightly, its massive form casting a shadow that swallowed Jake whole. It was a grotesque blend of claws and fangs, with eyes that glowed like dying stars, hungering for warmth and life. Jake! She screamed, her breath hitching. I'm coming for you. But she felt the weight of the darkness wrapping around her, its cold tendrils pulling her back. She could sense Harrow's delayed presence, a suffocating assurance that he watched, relishing her plight. The beast let out an agonizing roar, shaking the very foundations of the cellar. It tore at the air between them, a horrible sound that felt like a physical manifestation of her nightmares. Sarah shuddered, but the scream brought forth a swell of anger. Time was running out. She lunged towards Jake, her fingers brushing the cold metal of the shackles that bound him. Hold on, she shouted, urgency lacing her voice. But just as she reached him, the beast surged forward, blocking her path with a snarling snout that dripped with malice. The foul stench overwhelmed her senses. She stumbled back, a terrible dread coiling in her stomach. What do you want from us? She roared, practically shaking with terror. The beast paused, as if considering her question, and then let out a low, guttural growl. It wasn't just a sound. It felt like a threat, an echo that bypassed her ears, reaching deep into her very soul. The shadows closed in, every whisper now a chaotic frenzy, clamoring for attention, each voice a memory of someone lost, someone another had sacrificed. Sarah! Jake's voice cut through the chaos. You have to let it go. Just run. But she wouldn't leave him. Not now. The chains that held him were more than metal. They were symbols of captivity, of Harrow's power over them. If she wanted to break this cycle of darkness, she first had to confront the beast. She gritted her teeth, forcing her feet to move again, edging closer beneath the beast's ferocious gaze. The whispers grew louder, almost drowning her resolve. "Join us, become one, embrace the shadows." "No," she shouted, clawing back at the voices, reminding herself that surrender was not an option. They needed a plan, a way to outsmart both Harrow and whatever horror lurked before her. Summoning every ounce of strength, she darted to the side, hoping to confuse the creature. "Jake, stay strong. I'll find a way to break these chains." She scanned the room, searching for anything to use, a tool, a piece of metal, anything. The room was dank and dark, illuminated only by his frightened face. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of something glimmering amidst the shadows, a rusty, old crowbar. "There!" she shouted, but as she moved towards it, the beast reacted, lunging. In moments, it could close the gap faster than any human could react. Sarah felt time stretch, a heartbeat becoming an eternity as she lunged for the crowbar, grabbing it just as the creature pounced. Her hands trembled around the cold metal, and for the briefest moment, she hesitated. Then, the echo of Jake's fearful cry surged within her. She spun to face the beast, adrenaline thrumming in her veins. "Get away from him!" she screamed, swinging the crowbar with everything she had. The impact with its snout sent a jolt through her body. The beast staggered back, snarling, but it was merely a momentary distraction. "Move, Sarah! It's not done yet," Jake yelled, pulling against the chains frantically as the growls turned to furious roars. Shadows erupted around them, and Sarah realized they had only just begun to grasp the peril they faced. The darkness pulsed, angered by their defiance. With her heart on fire, she turned her gaze toward Jake, steeling herself, knowing that they were in deeper trouble than ever. Could she protect him? Could they both survive this nightmare? As the beast lunged again, fierce and unstoppable, Sarah felt the walls pulse with a dreadful energy. Time was running out, and her next choice would decide their fate. Would she stand her ground or fall into the abyss of Harrow's haunting grip? The beast recoiled, but instinctively, Sarah knew it would come back, more furious than before. She raised the crowbar, feeling its weight anchor her to the moment, grounding her resolve against the terror that enveloped the room. Jake's frantic pulls against the chains echoed in her mind, mingling with the raging growls of the creature preparing its next assault. "Stay back, you monster!" she screamed, swinging the crowbar wildly. The creature flinched at the sound, just for a breath, and in that fleeting moment, Sarah felt a surge of power, an overwhelming desire to charge at the darkness enveloping them. It offered a fleeting, burning hope. The beast, infuriated, lunged again. This time, it moved as a blur, more beast than shadow. Sarah's heart raced. She ducked, narrowly avoiding the snap of jagged teeth. The crowbar barely grazed the beast's side, but she could feel the heat radiating off its putrid flesh. Panic coursed through her veins. "Jake, I need a distraction," she shouted, eyes never leaving the beast. In the silhouette of her blurred vision, she saw fear wash over Jake's face, and then his eyes narrowed with determination. "Just hold on. I'll get free." His voice was strained, but urgent. The creature roared once more, a sound that felt like nails scraping against her sanity. It charged, undeterred by Sarah's presence. She was aware that as it approached, shadows thickened around her, a suffocating blanket pulling her towards despair. "Now!" Jake yelled. With a mighty heave, he pulled against the chains one last time. The metal links screeched in protest as they bent, but the chain held. Sarah's heart dropped. Staring down the beast, she knew she had to act. She stepped aside, barely avoiding the claws that raked the air where she had stood moments before. Quick as lightning, she swung the crowbar with calculated precision, connecting with a powerful blow against the beast's leg. A howl erupted, reverberating through the cellar, a sound so torturous, it pierced through her resolve. The beast stumbled, but it retaliated with a union of fury and hunger, eyes fixed on her. The chains that bound Jake seemed to rattle with the pulse of pure malevolence, as if they were alive, feeding off the despair. "Sarah, hurry," Jake urged, desperation in his tone igniting her heart. But where was Harrow? She could almost feel his presence lurking just beyond the shadows, feeding off the chaos combined with Sarah's fear. Letting out a breath that seemed to catch in her throat, she turned to face Jake once more. "I'll get those chains off. I promise." A sense of determination ignited within her as she gripped the crowbar tightly. The beast was gathering itself now, ready for another attack. Its snarling growls reverberated through the dank air, and Sarah felt every ounce of fear clawing at her resolve. Then, clarity struck amidst the chaos. She turned her gaze, scanning her surroundings. The flickering light from an oil lamp illuminated a hint of something behind a crumbling crate stacked precariously against the wall. Her mind raced. If she could just Sarah? Jake's shout pulled her from the brink of distraction. With the creature closing in again, she dashed toward the crate, praying it harbored something useful. Her fingers fumbled in the dark, pushing aside cobwebs and dust, and then she felt it. A rusty pair of heavy bolt cutters. Heart racing, she yanked them free just as the beast crashed into the crate, splintering wood in its wake. "Sarah!" Jake cried again, his voice fading into a breathy panic. She turned, adrenaline buckling under the weight of terror. The beast loomed closer. It lunged, fangs glistening with anticipation, and she swung the bolt cutters, the metal snapping shockingly against the beast's snout. It recoiled, but now it was a game of distance. "Jake, I can't hold it back much longer," she shouted, the reality of their situation hitting hard. "Just find something, anything to break these chains." His voice trembled with fear and anger. The creature circled around, eyes narrowed, plotting its next move, but Sarah felt something shift deep inside her. They were out of time. With a primal scream that liberated her fears, she hurled the bolt cutters towards Jake. Their clatter against the ground echoed her desperation. "You can break free. Now, will he find the strength to escape Harrow's nightmare? Or would they be left to the mercy of the beast they had roused?" As shadows moved around her, the air warped with an oppressive weight. Sarah knew that the true horror was not just the creature in front of them, but the darkness lurking behind the veil of their reality. The light flickered ominously as thunder rolled outside, intertwining with the beast's growl. A storm was nearing, and it carried the smell of blood. What awaited them in its eye? Jake's eyes darted to the bolt cutters, the metal glinting ominously as they hit the ground. For a moment, hope wrestled with fear, but the beast's growls shattered the suspense, pulling him back into the nightmare. He wrenched at the chains, urgency fueling every desperate twist of his wrists. Come on," he muttered, ignoring the searing pain as the chains dug into his skin. He couldn't see what Sarah was doing through the haze of fear and shadow clamoring around them, but he knew she was fighting for them both. With a roar of rage, the creature lunged again, its claws sweeping the air with lethal grace. Sarah barely sidestepped, heart racing with wild adrenaline. She swung the crowbar, but this time the beast was prepared, dodging just in time. It shot toward Jake, eyes glowing with hungry malice. "No!" Sarah screamed, a cold realization chilling her marrow. In a split second, she dropped the crowbar as Jake grappled hopelessly with his chains. The sound of snapping metal reverberated in the close space. The chains rattled violently, each clang a countdown to disaster. With a primal yell, Sarah charged. She grabbed the bolt cutters and hurled them at the beast like a javelin. They struck true, slicing through the thick fur of the creature's shoulder. It howled, furious and shocked, and immediately redirected its wrath towards her. Sarah felt its filthy breath before she saw it. "Run, Jake. Get free," she urged, dodging behind an old wooden barrel. But Jake was frozen, wrestling with his own panic. The chains creaked ominously, but the bolt cutters lay inches from his hands. Fear was weighing down on him, a darkness creeping in, whispering that even if he got free, escape was impossible. The beast stumbled, staggering back from the sudden attack, but before Sarah could catch her breath, it launched itself at her, fury blinding its hunger. Sarah ducked at the last second, fists clenched, adrenaline pumping through her veins as fury clashed with terror. "Sarah, please." Jake's voice trembled, but she fought through the chaos. She scrambled to grab the bolt cutters, but the creature had regained its footing, poised to pounce. With a surge of energy that felt almost supernatural, Sarah swung the metal against the creature's side, a desperate attempt to fend off the horror. It tumbled to the side, but recovered quicker than she'd anticipated. "Jake!" she shouted, desperation thickening her voice. "Get the cutters." The creature lunged again, teeth bared. Panic surged through Sarah, almost paralyzing. She couldn't hear anything but the pounding of her own heart, a frantic drum echoing in the basement. Suddenly, as if summoned by their bond of fear, a new chill snaked through the cellar. The lights flickered ominously, casting grotesque shadows that warped the truth of their surroundings. The thunder outside rumbled like a warning, and with it came a different, more sinister sound, a whispered chant, a call to darkness. Harrow's face flickered in her mind. She pictured him lurking just beyond the chaos, a puppet master pulling on their strings. If they didn't act fast, they would be trapped in his sickening game forever. "Jake now!" she screamed, adrenaline fueling her resolve. Jake's heart thundered as he finally lunged for the bolt cutters. His fingers gripped them, but the creature turned back, the fury rising anew. It wasn't just a beast, it was something darker, feeding off their fear, something that thrived when they were weak. The chains jerked under Jake's frantic pulling, slowly giving way, but as he felt a shred of freedom, the growl rose again. The beast was ready for a final assault. "Get ready, Sarah?" But before she could respond, the creature surged forth, and the cellar filled with a deadly silence, the smog of fear pooling around them. What darkness awaited as the last barrier crumbled? What hell would the storm unleash upon them now? Jake felt the chains break loose, a rush of freedom that fluttered his heart, but dread surged. The beast, a mass of fury and savagery, narrowed its eyes, its focus shifting from Sarah to him. It knelt low, muscles coiling, ready to leap. "Move, Sarah!" he shouted, urgency bubbling over. But she wasn't behind the barrel anymore. The wild swings and desperate lunges had drawn them apart. Panic rolled through him like thick smoke. "Here!" Sarah gasped, urgently waving her arms from the shadows, trying to distract the beast. Jake seized the bolt cutters, his hands shaking. The moment of clarity was blinding amidst the chaos. He met Sarah's frantic gaze, her eyes wide with fear, but igniting with hope. "I see you. Just hold on." Without thinking, he turned the full weight of both arms into the bolt cutters, leaping toward the beast. It hissed in irritation, turning toward him with bared teeth. Suddenly, the cellar shuddered with an explosion of darkness. The lights faltered, flickering like dying fireflies, leaving them gasping shadows that danced menacingly at the corners. Jake could hear the storm raging outside, thunder crashing like warning bells. The air thickened, heavy with dread as the whispered chant grew louder. It was like a pulse, syncing with the rapid beats of his heart. Come join us." "Jake!" Sarah's voice was nearly lost amidst the growls and chants. "We have to work together." Clenching his jaw, Jake tightened his grip. On three then. They needed to coordinate, but it was evident just how quickly the beast could strike. 1-2 before he could finish, the creature lunged at Sarah, slashing at her direction with claws outstretched. She had only seconds to react, ducking low while swinging the crowbar, but its speed was blinding. "No!" Jake shouted, panic clawing at his chest. Racing forward, he threw the bolt cutters like an axe, hoping desperately to intervene. They struck with a metallic clang, skimming off the beast's flank and embedding into the wall with a splintering thud. Blood sprayed across the cellar like a grotesque signature of their desperation. The beast snarled, a low rumble that vibrated through the ground. It turned slowly, eyes now locked onto Jake, as if sizing him up for something more sinister than a mere kill. "Get down," Sarah shouted, standing between the creature and Jake, unyielding. Her hand trembled, gripping the crowbar like a lifeline. But the conviction in her stance was trembling. "The power, it's fading," Jake stammered, dread gnawing at him. With each flicker of light, shadows folded over themselves, whispering. Harrow the puppet master was in control, and they were merely pieces on a board. "Focus," Sarah shouted again, louder this time. "Whatever it is, we can't let it win." Just then, the growls transformed. The sound morphed into laughter, chilling and hollow. The beast's mouth twisted, revealing rows of sharp teeth, as goblins of the deep emerged around it. Shadows brought to life in swirling, ethereal forms that danced maliciously. "What are those?" Jake gasped, skin crawling as reality blurred. "More of Harrow's tricks," Sarah hissed, breath quickening. We can't let fear rule us. But fear held Jake tight, a vice grip he struggled to break. The chant seemed to pull at his insides, a siren-esque call to surrender. As he glanced at the shadows creeping closer, he wondered, how could they possibly challenge an enemy that thrived on fear itself? Just as he steeled his nerves, the room erupted into chaos. The beast lunged for Sarah, and he had to make a choice: save her or confront the nightmare. Everything felt wrong. Nothing made sense. Could they really fight back against the darkness, or were they destined to be consumed? Where was the exit? Was there any escape from this living nightmare? In that moment of decision, Jake faced a truth darker than the depths of the cellar. Would hope conquer the terror, or would they both be lost in the suffocating gloom? The creature lunged faster than Jake could blink. He threw himself to the side, barely dodging the razor-sharp claws that sliced through the air where he had been standing moments before. The beast's weight slammed into the floorboards, shaking the very foundation of the cellar. A guttural roar echoed off the damp stone walls, rattling Jake's bones. "Sarah!" he cried, scrambling to his feet. He needed to protect her. The shadowy goblins danced closer, their giggles rising like a sinister chorus that filled the air with malice. Each cackle wrapped around his mind, squeezing out reason and boiling hope into despair. "Stay back," Sarah yelled, swinging the crowbar with ferocity. Her feet planted firmly, she faced the beast unwaveringly, but Jake could see the quiver in her lip and the sweat glistening on her brow. Suddenly, the room went dark. No, not dark malevolent. The shadows surged, swallowing light like hungry beasts of the night. The echoes of their taunting laughter morphed into a dissonant melody, rising and falling like waves crashing against the precipice of sanity. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't think. All he could feel was terror. The air turned electric, heightened with an intensity that tingled against his skin. He lunged for the wall, feeling traces of his breath fog the cool stone as he fought to find a solution. But in that moment of turmoil, he sensed an oddity, a flicker within the darkness. Just beyond the swirling shadows of despair, a shimmer danced alluringly. A glint of something metallic caught his eye, a long, jagged shard of the bolt cutters. "Over here," he shouted to Sarah, grabbing the shard and feeling its weight settle into his hand. But before he could reach her, the beast whirled, now disinterested in Sarah, drawn towards him like a moth to flame. Its growls morphed into snarls, a primal urge to claim its prey that he felt the goblins creep closer, their eyes like pinpricks of ice boring into his soul. Warnings echoed in his head. This was endless. They were trapped in a nightmare of Harrow's design. "Jake!" Sarah's cry pierced through the chaos, and he glanced back, only to see her shake uncontrollably as she backed against a pile of wooden crates. "Don't look at them," he shouted, desperation flooding his words. "Ignore the shadows." She nodded, breathing raggedly, teeth gritted. Together, they had to find a way to unite amidst the madness. But the shadows began twisting, ebbing towards her like dark smoke curling into life. A spectral form reached out, fingers curling into talons, and they grasped at Sarah's ankles. She screamed, trying to kick free, but more emerged, a grotesque form of horror, drawn to her fear. Panicking, Jake charged forward, brandishing the shard as if it were a weapon. He thrust it toward the nearest goblin, watching it dissipate in a wisp of smoke, but the others only grew bolder. They roared in laughter, and the beast howled along with them, its eyes wide, excited by the chaos. "Hold on, Sarah," Jake yelled. He plunged forward, intent on shattering the chain that wrapped around her, shadow and clamor encroaching like a deadly tide. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, he saw a glimmer not of fear but of defiance. "Together," Sarah shouted, fortifying her grip on the crowbar. With a fierce battle cry, they lunged into the seething mass. But as they took their stand, the howl of the beast grew louder, shaking the walls and darkening their resolve. The shadows closed in tighter, ensnaring them, twisting hope into terror once more. Would this be their end, losing themselves in a darkness that promised only despair? A single thought echoed in Jake's mind. What if Harrow could turn their greatest strength into their fatal weakness? As the specters surged around them, he wondered, could they find the heart to fight back, or was surrender the only path left untraveled? The air pulsed with an overwhelming dread as Sarah and Jake stood together, shoulder to shoulder against the encroaching shadows. The beast emitted a growl that reverberated through the cellar, clawing at their sanity. They had awakened a storm, a monstrous presence that wanted to consume them whole. Yet amid the chaos, a flicker of defiance sparked in Sarah's chest. "We can't give in," she shouted, rallying her courage. Jake felt adrenaline course through him, every nerve on fire. "We need a plan. Distract it while I get closer." But their thoughts were barely coherent as the beast lunged, teeth glimmering in the dim light. Suddenly, the goblins roared in chorus, shadows spiraling into a whirlwind of terror. "No!" Sarah screamed, raising her crowbar high as if it could fend off the nightmares closing in around them. They were trapped in Harrow's design, with the shadows both taunting them and feeding on their fear. "Now!" Jake shouted, flinging the jagged shard of the bolt cutter straight into the chaos. It sliced through a shadowy goblin, dispersing it into a cloud of darkness. But even as it fell, the shadows surged forward, more relentless than ever. Making a quick decision, Sarah pivoted sharply. "I'll hold them back," she yelled. She swung the crowbar, connecting with another goblin and sending it swirling into mist. Jake saw his opening. With the metal shard clenched tightly in his grasp, he sprinted towards the beast. "You want to take her," he yelled, aiming for the massive chains binding Sarah to this nightmare. Desperate, he lunged forward, praying the shard would do more than just slice shadows. In that split second, the beast turned its rage towards him. Its eyes narrowed, and with a horrifying speed, it charged. But Jake pressed on, plunging the shard into the thick chains around Sarah's ankles at the last moment. The metal cranked against the bone like a rusted door swinging open. "Jake!" Sarah yelled, but he didn't let the shout distract him. He could feel the weight in his hand transform into a burden. She tilted her head, eyes wide as chains crumbled to dust. Free, she wielded her crowbar with newfound spirit, striking down several encroaching goblins, laughing as they shattered like glass. That laughter ignited something primordial within them both. With renewed energy, Jake and Sarah moved together, countering the darkness closing in. The creature screeched, angered by their defiance. Shadows twisted, trying to claw their resolve, but each blow from Sarah's crowbar and each lunge from Jake's shard diminished the monster's fury. The beast lunged again, a desperate final charge. But this time, it was too late. Jake dodged, flinging the shard toward its exposed flank. It pierced through the flesh, and it howled a sound that rivaled the deepest despair. The darkness surrounding it rippled, and for the first time, Sarah thought she could see hints of light breaking through. The shadows shrieked, disintegrating in the presence of their resolve. "Together, Jake, we can finish this," she hollered, pushing against the darkness as they moved as one. With one final swing, she smashed the crowbar into the creature's head. The sound of cracking echoed, a wicked chorus of triumph. The beast staggered, eyes swirling into unfathomable abyss as it collapsed into a whirlpool of shadows, dissipating into the very darkness it thrived upon. With the last burst of its energy, the lights brightened, illuminating the cellar in a warm glow. It felt surreal, intoxicatingly hopeful. Jake stumbled back towards Sarah. "Did we?" "We did." She beamed, pulling him into an embrace. Together, they survived. The shadows were fading, retreating like a tide as the last echoes of despair dwindled into a silence almost too perfect to believe. But then the silence transformed. A chilling laugh resonated through the walls, Harrow's voice. He would not accept defeat so easily. "You think you can escape? You are merely pawns in my game, forever entwined in the darkness." They turned, realizing that the cellar was shifting, the walls bending, the way out disappearing. Determination anchored in their hearts. "No," Sarah shouted, fear becoming a fiery anger. "We've broken your curse. We won't be your pawns any longer." Jake nodded, squeezing her hand. "We reclaim our lives. Together." The shadows melted away as they surged toward the doorway, a surge of shared strength propelling them forward, igniting their will. Screaming their defiance, they broke through the darkness that had trapped souls for too long. As they burst into the corridors of Millfield Medical Center, everything changed. The air felt different, bright, the stench of despair replaced by fresh possibility. You were brave, Jake murmured, looking down the vibrant hall. And you were fearless, Sarah replied, heart swelling with pride. They stepped outside to a night draped in stars, leaving the hospital its secrets and shadows trapped forever in the past. Finally free. Let us go home, Jake said, glancing back one last time. Home, Sarah echoed, the weight of haunting memories finally lifting. Moments later, as they walked towards the horizon, dreams lit a path of hope before them. They bid farewell to the darkness, ready for the life ahead, a life no longer shadowed by fears, a life they could reclaim. As the first rays of dawn broke across the horizon, shadows lingered behind. But for Sarah and Jake, their journey was an awakening, a promise of new beginnings, and they would never look back. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to help fuel the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about whatever just went down here. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Their next story depends on you.